Do you struggle with putting yourself first? Are you tired of feeling burnt out and overwhelmed from constantly putting the needs of others before your own? I have created a sacred space that will be available once a week for 10 weeks to learn, dive deep, and create your boundaries to boost your confidence and self-worthiness. Go to www.krista-luna.com and sign up for the Master Your Boundaries course starting in September 2023. And use the code PARANORMAL to get 30% off today on www.crista-luna.com.
Well, check it out, y'all. We got what you need. We're all living in apartments, condos, vans. Well, dude, even you can have a studio in a box. Yes, we can help you with that right here at Blind Knowledge. We work on your budget, and we figure out your measurements. We'll get you the best sound for the best price. Let me know, 877-237-1143 or at blindknowledge.com. Yep.
Welcome to another episode of Paranormal, the new normal. I'm your host, as always, Jeremy, trying to bring a little normalcy to this world. Does it ever happen? Yeah, no. It never happens. But we try, and that's the point. But who we can, we love the weird. And of course, I brought a guest, as always, to help me embrace the weirdness of this world. And my guest today is Madame Zee of Madame Zee's School of Witchery, the newest Hogwarts that's in reality for this time. So, first things first, how you doing tonight, Madame Zee?
I'm good, doing great. Doing good.
Every time I say that name, I feel like I'm singing a Styx song.
Exactly. It's funny.
But, well, the first question I ask everybody on this show is, what got you into this paranormal spiritual world that you found yourself in?
Well, it was an interesting path for people who don't know me. My name is Madame Zee, and I'm a spiritualist, and also I teach people how to empower themselves through witchcraft and also through divination and paranormal studies. So, being that I've been doing this witching thing way before the internet, way before witching was even the cool thing to do right now, right? So divination and working on your spiritual gifts or your connection with what we call the other side, or when the thinning of the veil is there. When you start leveling up in your high priestess energy, your high priestess, we have different levels. You have to pick a divination tool. So my divination tool was always tarot, and then I do mediumship with tarot, and then it just snowballed into paranormal investigations with tarot, with Ouija boards, with spirit communication. So I started off as just doing mediumship with tarot, and then when I was going to all these paranormal events and these paranormal investigations, I was getting so many hits through my tarot cards and through my mediumship and automatic writing that I was already in tune anyways as a witch, as a spiritualist. So it was just automatically natural to me to connect to the other side, just in a different way than what you see, like, other people do with their electronics and everything like that. I do it really through mediumship and through tarot. So it was just a normal progression for me since I was already living in that spiritual world.
Nice. So you were born into it, which a lot of my guests are like that. They're born into it, and it's just something they embrace, thankfully.
Correct.
Now, I'm guessing that you were like a lot of my guests, and at a younger age, you were discouraged from doing these type of activities?
No, it was interesting because I was raised a Christian, and I left that Christian faith, and to find my own empowerment, my own thing. And I come from a very semi-open family, I would think. So I didn't have any of that. No, you can't do that kind of thing. They always said that I was a strange child. My mother always said that. So, but the more I talk to my mother when I get older, and she tells stories about how my grandmother was and how she was, my mother's, very much going to church still, very much a Christian, but both of them have the gift of being a witch in different aspects. More of like a kitchen witch, more of a garden witch, and more of like a green witch is what I would call my mother and my grandmother. And really worked by the cycles of the moon, even though they would never call themselves a witch, and they don't connect that way. But for some reason, it has went down the line through my mother, my grandmother, and to me and to my sister. So we all have some kind of ability, whether we embraced it or not. But no, I was always from a family who was like, okay, I don't understand it, but I'm not going to discourage you from doing that. But I was in the corporate world for a long time, and I was a pagan and a witch, and I was in corporate American higher education in the South at the time. And this was no way, shape, or form could you ever come out as a witch in public, because you would be ostracized. You would be the baby killer, the sacrifice kind of, you worship the devil kind of thing. So I still live my life very much in the broom closet until I left corporate America, because when I was witching, it was not open like it was now. What I always say is from 9 to 5, I had my corporate suit on. And then from, Friday until Sunday, I had my ritual garbs on, and it was just a big cycle. So it was very hidden. So yeah, people now are very lucky that they are able to, what I call witch out loud, and be really who they are and who they embrace themselves to be out loud. A lot of us didn't. We talk about weird stuff, and a lot of us weirdos were always ostracized as weirdos. It wasn't embraced as it is now.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, and I'm surprised because a lot of people I find in their upbringings in the 80s, 90s, what have you, were they're in the whole satanic panic phase.
I know, I was going to say satanic panic.
Like it's just like a lot of them were discouraged from, like, they had abilities and they were just like shut down the whole time, and it just. So I'm actually happy to get a different answer for once, because it's a nice change. I mean,
it is. It wasn't really talked about openly. It's not like I could cast a circle in my middle of the living room while I was watching Archie Bunker, if anybody knows who Archie Bunker was or whatever.
Oh, we worship the god Archie Bunker on this show. So yes.
Yeah. But, my parents were just like, okay, if you want to do it kind of thing. But the older I get and the more I talk to my parents about stuff, that they really just kind of let me explore things. And that was the way I was raised, whether it was a different religion, whether it was a different kind of culture, different kind of people, food, and all that kind of stuff. So they really did encourage me to try different things.
Good. I mean, that's great to hear for once, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah. I was fortunate.
Yes, I would say so. So, and just because a couple of things you said, I never really I kind of heard of it, but I never really got a definition for it. What is a kitchen witch besides besides what some people may call their wives? I don't know. But.
Yeah. Well, a kitchen witch is where they do magic in the kitchen through herbs that they probably grow and cut, or they make something homemade for you. It's just like when you're feeling sick, your grandma always says, let me make you some chicken soup. That's her way of healing you through cooking, right? And so I was from the Old South. I was from Tennessee and Georgia, Alabama. So all my people who are watching will understand this, and this is another part of kitchen witchery, is when I lived in the South, they were always talking about root workers. Like, she's going to put a root on you. And I was like, what the heck is she talking about? And they always told me, don't eat that, don't eat her spaghetti. Right? Because when you want to like incorporate magic into your lifestyle and not have anybody know what you're doing, the easiest way to do that is through kitchen witchery. And it also has to do with what kind of herbs, what kind of herbal magic you're working with, how you stir your pot, and really the energy that you put into it while you're creating that recipe. So it's healing the soul through kitchen witchery.
All right, that makes sense. And I'm assuming that garden witchery just kind of ties into that completely anyway. I mean, because I can almost say my mom was a kitchen witch then in a way. But
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think all women are, have some tendency to be a little bit witchy, whether they resonate with something else. So yeah, all of us, I think, have a tendency to do some kind of magic in our house.
Oh, there you go. And okay, the second question I asked everybody, and if the answer is no, it's always okay. But the second question I asked everybody is, have you had any encounters with any paranormal beings, whether they be of the spirit nature or of the extraterrestrial nature or of the cryptid nature even, which is rare, but we love to get those.
All of them. I've had a lot of spiritual encounters, but I've also had a lot of elemental encounters is what you would call them. I'm an earth person, so I am a Taurus, so I'm earth magic, so I resonate very much with any of the earth elements. Not so much a water magic, or elements, so I don't resonate with mermaids and dolphins and sirens and stuff. I'm not a water person. I'm more earth. So whenever there is a gnome around or the fairies around or anything like that, they always find me. And I always am really connected to trees. So there are tree elements also. But paranormal stuff we have experienced a lot of spirits and ghosts that have been on the other side that come through. But it's funny because I'm glad you asked about this, and I'm just rambling. Sorry, because I just love this stuff. When I do paranormal investigations, and everybody should probably do this and understand that some of the spirits that come through may not be a physical spirit. It may be something that is attached to the land, right? An elemental. So you need to ask questions. You need to ask, are you an elemental? Where are you from? Where do you come from? What realm do you come from? And that's going to give you some more guidance into what is actually happening, and it'll help you make more sense and put the pieces of the puzzle together to what is happening around you in that paranormal kind of event. Does that make sense? That was kind of a scenic route.
Yeah, no, it makes 100%. It makes 100% like sense. Like it does. It is just. I mean, of course, like my wife is from a house that's built on a Native American burial ground. So there's a lot of energy tied to the land there. It's not the house, it's the land. And they torment the people in the house, but they're from the land. I mean, but so it's just I get that 100%. Like it's just when you walk onto a piece of land and you feel like that energy, and it's just like even if you don't have the ability of any kind, like, and I was gonna say my parents always said I was a weird child too, even though I had no abilities. But yeah, I mean you walk into this land and it's just you feel something negative and it's just not pleasant and you want to leave that land as soon as possible. That's where I spent every other weekend for a good 3 years. So yeah.
Good times. But yeah, I think that with that we talked about, as we're talking about this a little bit more, person who is like a mediumship or medium who connects with spirits, elementals, angels, if you have a spirit guide, if you have Akashic records, if you can tap into other realms, right? And galactic beings is another thing that you can connect to also, which I find fascinating. I think it's called CE5. I forget that guy's name. But there's just so much out there that you can connect with that's not even on this spiritual plane. We're talking about other realms, completely other realms.
Yeah, other realms, other dimensions, whatever you want to call it at the end of the day. But since you're an earth magic user, I have to ask,
Yeah.
have you ever connected with a Bigfoot or Sasquatch in any way?
No, and I want to. And I just moved here from Austin. I'm in Missouri. And I didn't have any idea that Missouri is known for Bigfoot at all.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell? What's going on? Well, okay, I got to get with some Bigfoot folks. But what's interesting is when I was younger, I was raised in Wyoming in the Tetons and stuff, and they have tons of sightings out there of Bigfoot. And my brother, I think, has probably a story about that because we always have been hunting and always were in the woods and stuff. So camps. But I really would love to connect with some of the groups here that really want to do like Bigfoot kind of paranormal stuff. And it's interesting because we talk about this weird stuff, right? And one of the things that's going around, one of the thought processes is Bigfoot an alien? Have you heard about that?
Yes, There is actually, I actually have a theory about Earth in general, and part of that theory is that Bigfoot is a extraterrestrial prisoner like us humans. All my listeners know what I'm talking about because I've spouted this whole theory before. If you want to hear it, go back to the episode that Be Afraid of the Dark podcast was on. I know that's one episode. I definitely went into full detail on it, and it's an interesting theory, but I don't want to waste 20 minutes here talking about it. But
it's an interesting theory. Even, because even if you don't believe in any of this stuff we believe in, because, we're kind of out there, it's just interesting to actually have a conversation and just like, what if it exists? And you go down that whole rabbit hole, right, of what ifs. And
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's all the paranormal is wormholes.
Yeah, exactly. You can spend hours and hours just talking about and then getting off track, right? You're like, what's the original subject we were talking about? So
been there.
I know. Yeah, it's a wormhole. But yeah, I would love to actually go on, at least talk about it. I believe there's a pretty good Bigfoot convention here in Missouri.
Probably. I mean, I can't think of the name of it right now, but I'm pretty sure Missouri has a famous Bigfoot case.
I think they do.
I almost want to say I can't even think of it right now. My God, I feel ashamed, but I feel like Missouri has one. I can't think of the name of it, but yeah, and yeah, basically, I mean, any state that has woods has had Bigfoot sightings in some form, like at least at some point in their history. So, because they are a migrating creature, we believe. So they move around, and just like other animals, when the young ones get old enough to leave the family, they just go on their own to try to find their own family. So,
I know we have a handyman here, and he comes in and helps us stuff. And we were standing in the street outside talking about weird stuff and talking about Bigfoots. We were just talking about, hey, you guys see any Bigfoot, or are there some Bigfoot around? He said, oh yeah, I ran into one. So he told me a whole story about how he was driving down the road and just saw this thing, and it freaked him out. And I mean, he's just a very simple dude, very simple guy. And he's been here for a long time, and he's very, salt of the earth, down to earth. So it was just very interesting that he had that experience.
Of course. And okay, now I feel even more like a fool because Momo is from Missouri. Momo.
Yeah, Momo. Mm-hmm.
And Momo is the famous Bigfoot case I couldn't think of the name of. Like the Missouri Monster, Momo. Like it's just, oh my God, I feel so ashamed of myself right now. I should just go hang up my paranormal podcast I had for a long time.
Turn in your badge. Just turn in your badge. So.
I feel that way. Honestly, I do. But I mean, yeah, Momo. How the fuck did I forget Momo? Oh my God. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Momo. I know your descendants are still out there somewhere. I'm sorry. If you hear this, I'm sorry. But all right, well, let's talk about this school you opened.
Yeah.
Because what made you want to start a Actually, wait. Before I get into that, I almost forgot. You brought up gnomes.
Oh my god, yeah. I love gnomes, and gnomes are like the theme now for some reason, but it's not.
I was listening today to a podcast episode of Mythological Monsters, and they were talking about this creature. I'm in the month where they're doing Iceland, and they were talking about fairies and gnomes in one episode, and I was like, I mean, I can believe that gnomes. I can believe there are real gnomes out there, not the fake ones that everybody puts in their garden, but like real gnomes actually. But to come across like a gnome colony or village or whatever the hell they like to be called, like I can't imagine that. Like to actually have like a full gnome. Like so, you've actually seen these creatures?
Yeah, mine are the ones that are associated with me and are tuned to me. They're tiny. They're not small. Although they have different ones. And then I have house brownies also. And house brownies, they irritate me. So if something is missing in your house, for me, it's always brownies, house brownies. But gnomes, for me, they're small. And they just kind of go in and out of this area. That's why I have a garden out there and I have mushrooms out there also for them. To hide in. I'm looking for a door. They're very specific on what kind of door I need to get them. I'm like, man, I can't be walking around town asking everybody where's the damn, gnome house at door, because they're just gonna think I'm crazy. But they told me exactly what they want, so I have to find it. And I have a guardian tree that looks over the entire. My house for sure is planted on my house. But it's the biggest tree on the street. So that's where they usually hang out, between the garden and between that tree or in that tree. So I'm looking for that. And they will run up and down. We have a little path right here. And I'll see them every now and then. And but they're very active for me at night in the garden, right before dusk in the garden. They like to play around.
Interesting.
So. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, do they speak or they just run around?
They just run around. I'm not in tune with their frequency to hear them speak. As far as having conversations with them, unless they do telepathically, maybe they do, because I mean, how else would I know that they wanted a door, right? They didn't tell me. So I don't know. It's not the same language. It's not like they have a sit down and have a conversation with you kind of thing. They're very fast for me.
Well, yeah. I mean, I imagine they'd have to be. I mean, everything I know about gnomes is from hearing legends or Romeo and Juliet. But so I mean, it's interesting. That's one topic that we never hit on this podcast in 150 episodes. We haven't hit on gnomes, and that's awesome. I love that we finally did.
So if you can remember, I'm probably not going to remember this, but I think it was an old Stephen King movie with.
Curiosity piqued.
I know. Oh, with the E.T. girl in it. I think she was in it. And it was like a series of different movies, different short stories.
Oh, Cat's Eye.
Cat's Eye. So do you remember when she was a kid, a little girl, and that little creature would come out the bed, the room?
Yes. I read that short story too.
Yeah, that's kind of how gnomes are. They're tiny like that for me. So that kind of reminded me of that story for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, I would rather have a gnome than a fairy.
Well, we'll get into fairies in a second for sure.
No.
But no. Okay, we could avoid them. But no, the one thing that makes me think of gnomes always is there was this episode of Monsters and Mysteries in America that one of the three monsters in this episode was a gnome, and like they had like this laugh that they recorded that the gnome would do, like, and of course it's a human doing it, but still it's just like, like the laugh every time I heard it, I would just be like, "Oh my god, that's terrifying and hilarious at the same time." Like it was like a like type thing, and it's like what the like oh my god, like this is hilarious.
Yeah, they
But
can be kind of scary.
I'm sure. I mean, anything that I can't see because it's too small, like a mouse, like I don't want to deal with it. Like I'd rather deal with give me a bear over a freaking like
Yeah.
a spider that can kill me that's small I can't see. Like give me a bear. At least I know it's coming then. But
Exactly. You can hear it and see it and smell it.
exactly.
Yeah. They'll
But-
mess with you.
All right, so you don't want to talk about fairies? We could skip those.
Fairies, I mean, I just don't resonate with fairies, and there's a misconception about fairies, and I don't mess with them. They terrify me, just like angels. I don't mess with angels because angels terrify me, which is very odd. I think I'm the only person, probably I feel like I'm the only person who doesn't like angels and don't resonate with angels. But people don't understand that fairies will mess you up.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They have different rules. They get pissed off very easily. They're very picky, and they are not this whole Tinkerbell thing that everybody thinks they are.
No, they're not. They're not.
Mhm.
I read this book series a long time ago, like 15 years ago, and the main guy in it was the Storm King, and he basically controlled a realm of fairies, and this was like 50 Shades of Grey meets fairies, and it was like, whoa.
Oh yeah. They
So-
have, courts, and they have kings and queens, and they have hierarchies, and it's a whole system. And
It is, yeah.
and they have no rules. Your rules here in this, earthly realm does not pertain to them. So it's like no holds bars. And it's just insane. Once you piss one off, they kind of screw with you, and your life is kind of in shambles. That's why everybody, talks about giving gifts to the fairies all the time, right? To make them nice and not mess with you, and not, So that is why, because you try to be nice to them and give them gifts so they don't, try to kill you in your sleep. So
Exactly. I mean, it makes sense, but all right. I think we can now go into your realistic Hogwarts type of school, and which that might be part of the episode title. I'm just calling it now, but I'll figure out a way to word it nicely, comedically at least in some way. But I'm actually interested in this because I know a bunch of witches and Wicca and all that stuff. Like I know people who are into that. I've had a witch/Wiccan on here before, but I'm kind of interested in the school you do. Like, what do you actually teach at this school?
I have a lot of different subjects that I teach. I'm always creating stuff. So I have a course in there on tarot, psychic abilities, divination, and I have my number one course is Basic Witch to Badass Witch, Basic Chick to Badass Witch. So it's just basic coursework on witchcraft, like phases of the moon, how to cast a circle, do you even need to cast a circle, how to set up your altar, how to work with ancestors. So it's everything from basic witchcraft and also to drilling down to different types of gifts that you have. It also does include, I have a psychic paranormal investigator certification course. So that is one of my number one sellers too. So I have how to use pendulums in there, spirit communication, mediumship. So it covers everything. It's got goddess energies in there. And it takes you really from a brand new or newbie witch who's just starting out in their path and they want the foundational work done to someone who's been finished with that and wants to really just go into the deeper level of magic and empowerment, which is like high priestess kind of stuff, high rituals, and working with lesser known tools and lesser known type of ways of doing magic. So
that's a lot to cover there.
it's a lot. It's a whole school.
It is, and thank you, Wild Bill. I'm glad you're enjoying this.
Yeah.
But let me, well, okay, where to start? So one, how did you come across the idea to start a school? Like,
Well,
was it told to you, or did you just come up with it on your own? Or
it was what we call a divine download. So, like I talked about, I was connected to the other plane, right? The spiritual plane. So, and I'm connected to goddesses. So, a lot of my things and ideas and course creations and stuff will come from the divine, will come from, the ether, the spiritual world. Especially when I'm in meditation or I'm doing rituals, it will come to me to create that kind of a higher power.
all right. And so, if someone wants to come to your school, is there like kind of like an entrance exam almost, like where they have to, or do you try to figure out like what they're? Because I mean, from what I know about witchcraft, there's the four main like fields: earth, air, fire, water. Like those are the main four fields. And I mean, if you consider spirit like a fifth one, I know some people do, but kind of like, I mean, I also know more about this because of Vampire Academy books than anything. But
Yeah, you have elements: earth, air, fire, water. Some people call spirit also. But my teaching is pretty much the courses that I have in there is self-study. So, and then I teach one-on-one students also. I teach very differently because when I started, the only path that was available to me at the time was Wicca. So I was very much initiated into Wiccan High Priestess. But I found Wicca to be too many rules. So I left Wicca and now I'm more eclectic, and that's how I teach. I don't have a rule of three. Some people do. To me, there are no rules in witchcraft, but that's my personal thing. And also, whatever resonates with you is your magic. So I teach my students also to create what I call their special magical sauce, right? Because how I do my magic and who I resonate with and my guides and goddesses are completely different, and ancestors completely different from my student and who they connect with. So my magic is not going to work for them. So I teach them how to create their own magic through the foundations, and then to start branching out and start using your intuition and what's right and what feels right for you, and not what's been taught to you.
which makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, use what you already naturally have rather than trying to force something else on yourself. That, I mean, we try to force anything on yourself in order to do it. Well, if it's not natural, it's not going to feel right, and it's not going to work in the long run. I mean, maybe some results, but it's not going to be. It's like it's like applying for a job you know nothing about and that you can't learn, and then you wonder why you get fired a week later. Like it's just
your magic doesn't work, right? Because you're not working with yourself, you're not working with your higher power. But so that's what's different than how I teach than probably what anybody else teaches, is because I really don't have any rules that you have to follow. You just have to be accountable for your own magic. And I don't believe magic is good or evil either. And it's all about your intentions. So if you want to do a hexing, or if you want to do a binding spell, just know there's other spells that you can do that are just as effective. And you have to really think about, do you want this kind of karma that you're creating? And is it really worth that kind of energy? Because here's the thing with that, hexing takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of, sometimes you have to get some supplies, right? So you have to really think about, is this person worth hexing or binding or burying or whatever? Or is there another spell that you can do? So it's really, I teach them to be really mindful of their magic. And sometimes it's just better to just put them in the freezer and just be done with it. Right?
exactly. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had someone else talk about this in the show, but I want to kind of get your perspective on it.
Yeah.
where do you stand on the whole witch versus Wicca battle?
It's hard to say because I kind of just don't believe in why there has to be either or kind of thing. Why can't you just be who you want to be? If you want to be a witch, then be a witch. You want to be Wiccan, why does it matter? Right? But I feel with Wicca, you have more rules than if you are just a witch. So if you're all about rules and everything, just stay with Wicca, I suppose. I didn't like the rules. I felt that it kept me boxed in. And when I actually, I did a releasing ceremony of me being bound to my Wicca circle and my Wiccan coven. And I found it more freeing to be able to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it and use my own energy and pull from different pantheons and be witched and actually be boxed into doing only Wicca type of spells and Wicca type of rituals. Because not all of us connect to a deity. Not all of us want to call in the quarters. Right?
Exactly. I mean, I see. It always fascinated me, the difference, because I always, for a long time, I assumed that Wicca and witch were the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I found out as I got more into the paranormal that it's obviously not the same thing, and any novice in either can tell you that. But
no.
All right. Well, what do you? I like to ask this of all my guests that know witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
Are there actually like dark or evil witches out there?
Well, like I said, I don't think there's white or dark magic, just as there is not any white or dark witch. And I'll tell you a little story about that in a little bit. But it's all about your intentions. It's all about, are you centered? And it's all about, have you done your shadow work? Because, and if you're coming from ego, if you haven't balanced those out, then yes, your magic is going to be darker, right? Then someone who knows their power, knows that sometimes they just have to walk away from the situation and know that not every fight is worth it. And sometimes silence is probably the best thing to do. Because for people who have powerful abilities and know that we can screw stuff up and screw up a person's life, you have to have restraint as a powerful witch, because you have to know that you're responsible for your own karma and your own destiny. And as long as you know, like, oh yeah, if I do this, I'm going to reap some of the karma and I'm okay with that. So my life in Fold is going to be like shit for 2 years because, I did this to them. But I don't think there is any white or dark magic. And there's no, for me, it's not any white or dark witch. For me, and it's funny because I got asked that, because I used to do the metaphysical fairs all over the place, but mainly in Austin, right? And so I was been at the metaphysical fair with the founder for about 2 or 3 years. She knows me. She's worked with me and stuff. So, and there is a difference between witches and spiritualists in light and love. Witches kind of hate the light and love stuff because I hate that light and love stuff. But
Wild Bill threw in their karma with prayer hands, and that I'm a big believer in karma, Wild Bill, so I'm with you on that. But
and so she come up to me and she said, "Are you a good witch or are you a bad witch?" And I was like, "You've known me forever." I said, "It's situational. I can be good and I can be bad, but it depends on you and how you present yourself to me." So, I don't think it's that simple. I think it's very situational. If you're good to me, then I'm going to do good magic to you. But if you screw me over, you best believe the worst thing you can ever do is screw a powerful witch over, because they will destroy you. I've had to do that 2 or 3 times, and I've been witching for a long time. I do other kind of spells, but for powerful ones who actually destroy a person, I've only done that probably 2 or 3 times in my career. It was justified for sure.
And just out of curiosity here, are those spells that are bad, do they require like things like fiction would have us believe, such as blood or sacrifice of any kind?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Ooh.
That's what I said. Not a normal sacrifice, what you think. And this is what I tell people, because I love to take the myths and misconceptions about what witchcraft really is. Have you ever seen those memes of like what people think I really do as a witch and what I do?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, and it's pretty much true. People think that we do kind of crazy stuff and we're just sitting at home chilling watching Netflix most of the time. But
I mean, the nights you're not dancing with a demon in the moonlight, but
well, hey, and it's interesting. I'd rather work with a demon than an angel because we talked about how angels, terrify me. But
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm very different than anybody that I've ever really come across. My views are very different, I'm kind of an outcast even in the outcast circle because I believe in all this weird stuff. But so sacrifice comes in many forms, and the sacrifice that everybody thinks about is an animal sacrifice, slitting the throat, blooding kind of thing, or whatever. Which blooding is a different thing. We'll talk about that. But when you do a sacrifice, you can sacrifice your time. You can sacrifice the first perfect bread that comes out when you're giving that as an offering. You sacrifice money sometimes when you have to buy supplies. You sacrifice your energy to do this spell. It's not necessarily the old school sacrificing of a chicken, right? Even if you're on a diet, you have to sacrifice, hey, I'm not eating Cheetos today. Or if you're cutting cigarettes out or coffee out, I'm not having any coffee today. It's a sacrifice, and it comes in many different forms. And that's why I say when you really want to hex someone, do you really want to sacrifice your time and your energy with this person? Is it worth the sacrifice that you have to do? Because it's never a one and done spell. You're always feeding that spell. And you're like, do you really want to have dominion over that spell, and you want to be responsible for that spell for years and years and always have to feed it on the full moon or the dark moon? Do you really want that? So that kind of sacrifice. And it's not what you think it is. We don't do that stuff. But bloodletting is different. And so bloodletting for me is just like poking your finger, and it binds you to that spell. But you can also bloodlet your tools. So if you ever want any of your tools bound to you in your essence, then you just prick your finger with a little bit of blood, and you just put dabs of blood on your altar or on your tools. And that centers it, and that grounds it, anchors it, and it keeps you connected to those spiritual tools.
All right. Well, there you go. And Wild Bill said, all have good and bad in them. It's just how it's directed.
Correct.
There is no one or the otother.
Yep.
And he also added, lastly, sacrifice something that is given by you, which is basically what you said. Like it's sacrifice something that's given by you, and it's just, I mean, like for my kids, I sacrifice my time for my kids, and
money, right?
don't get me down that wormhole. Oh,
and money, yeah.
Oh, the amount of money I spend, but
it's a sacrifice.
It is. It truly is. But let's get into this because we are getting, well, not exactly at the end yet, but close to.
Yeah.
First things first, because there's so many questions. But what is the course that turns people into a badass witch?
It's a basic chick to badass witch, which is like a 7-module course, so it's a self-study, and that's on there. And then other stuff that probably would resonate with your audience in the podcast is my paranormal spiritual communication certification, and that's in that school too. That was one of my favorite ones.
Which, yes, I mean, Parapost Network is a huge lover of paranormal investigators. A lot of paranormal investigators have their own shows on this network, so that will definitely resonate with them, of course.
So if you want to become certified paranormal investigator, spiritualist, it's all in there. I mean, when I did it live, it was a 6-month course. So it's now condensed into 6 modules. And so we go over exorcisms, demonology, mediumship, paranormal tools, how to hold your first paranormal events. So it takes you, through all of that. And it's a phenomenal course. It's one of my favorite courses I've created.
Sounds interesting. Mm-hmm. It does. And it makes me wonder if any of the paranormal investigators I know ever took it. But
they should. Even if, it's a different take, because it here's what I tell my students, and when I do paranormal investigations and stuff, and I host them, and my paranormal investigations are a little bit different because it's also hands-on. I only have probably 2 or 3, maybe 4 at the most, electronic tools. All of my other tools are divination tools, like pendulums, tarot. Automatic writing is my favorite way to do spirit communication also. But all these paranormal investigations that I go on, they're all in the electronics. They're missing out. They're just like this, watching their meters. And they are completely missing out on what is happening around them. They're missing out on orbs. They're missing out on, shadow people going in and out. They're missing out on just tapping into the energy of that space and feeling your body change as the spirits come in and out. So I like the tools as confirmation sometimes, but I really want to get these people into experiencing it through their body, through the event and what's happening around them, and not so much relying on the electronics that can go out at any time. So what happens if your battery's dead and you don't have a battery? Then your investigation's over. You're just going to sit there in the dark, I suppose.
All right. There's one, when you were naming all the different tools you teach for that, there was one that you said, and I can't remember what it is now, but I never heard it before, and I was very interested in it. No, not pendulum. It wasn't tarot.
Automatic writing?
Yes, automatic writing. I have never heard that term in my life, and I'm kind of curious what that is.
That's almost, you have a piece of paper, and you kind of trans out, and you let the spirits come in and talk to you, and you write down whatever comes through to you. So you're almost in a trance. Almost, and I talk about this too, is possession always negative, right? And I also love Ouija boards, and people are freaked out about Ouija boards. And I'm like, and I teach that in that class, how to properly use a Ouija board, right? You have to properly learn how to do it. But automatic writing is really interesting, and it's fun to do. You get a lot of good stuff, especially when you combine it with other tools. So when I do my automatic writing, I kind of trance out, and then it just flows. And my handwriting, you can see it change from my normal handwriting to another person's handwriting. And you can get sentences, you can get just words, images, feelings, symbols. It doesn't necessarily have to be complete sentences. You can get all kinds of stuff. You can draw, get pictures. So that's another form of spirit communication through automatic writing.
All right. Well, yeah. I'm glad I asked what that was then, because that's interesting. And while Bill says, well, a lot of things, but one thing Wild Bill mentioned is one must remember there are consequences for things done. For every action there is a reaction. That's 100% correct.
Right.
According to him, the best electronic item is a recorder for EVP is the best proof you can get. Yes, that's a big paranormal investigation tool. He uses scrying.
Oh, what kind of scrying? Crystal ball or mirror? Or
and he said, I have a portable black mirror that I carry with me when I go to locations.
Ooh, yeah, we need to connect because I want to learn how to do more scrying. I do scrying mirror work I have, but I've done most of mine through candle scrying, candle flame. I
Huh.
love scrying. And then what was it? What is that called when they put you in a box? I call it a spiritual box. And it's all black and you have a mirror here and a mirror in the back of you and two candles. I forget the name of that. I don't know the name of that.
I can't say I've ever heard of that.
Oh
But,
my gosh. See, this is old school spiritualist stuff that I'm trying to bring back. The
oh,
1800 spiritualist
I was
stuff.
gonna say with the Fox sisters, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, as much as the two of them were disproven to be frauds later on, but
Yeah.
still, I mean, there was a lot of real people during that time who, not Houdini, but actually, yeah, it was Houdini who was into it. I think.
Wasn't. Yeah. And
Yeah, Arthur Conan Doyle is the one who's disproving it, not Houdini. But yeah,
Obsidian.
but
Yeah.
yeah, Wild Bill says he has an obsidian mirror.
Obsidian's my favorite.
Well, and if you watch the video for this, since I tagged you, Dave, you watch the video for this, you can easily see him comment and connect with him. And he says, "I am old school. Been doing this for over 40 years now. I was doing it wasn't cool."
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm going to tell my age, but I'm oh my god 52. So yeah, we're the same age. Long time, way before it was cool to be a witch, and then way before the internet. And really, if you wanted to be a witch, it was so underground, and you had to go try to find a mentor, and you had to go. The library was the only thing we had at the time, and so if you were lucky, your library ordained priest. Cool and interesting. We need to talk about exorcisms then. Yes, send me a message. Then, if you really wanted to be a witch, you had to go to the library in the dungeon in the basement and try to find the 3 or 4 books that were on paganism. It was, you had to work for your knowledge back then. It was a year and a day studying and tests. So they did not make it easy like it is now.
Well, let me ask you this, because I'd never met anybody who would rather deal with demons than angels. So, have you actually dealt with a demon in the past? Is my question.
Yeah, and I've worked with demons, and I've had them. This is so bad. I've had them do some of my bidding as far as spell work. Nothing negative, because if you think of everything, and this is the kind of stuff that we talk about in the school, and we talk about just in my circle that I have every once a month. If everything is yin and yang, and everything has a good and bad, don't you think that demons have some good qualities and some bad qualities, and the same thing as angels? And if you have an angel that is supposed to be attached to you, don't you think you should have a demon that's attached to you?
It makes sense. And Wild Bill says that he's certified on the World Registry for Exorcisms.
Oh yeah, we need to talk. I love exorcism. But here's the thing. I have been shown what angels look like, and they're the Hebrew type of angels, what they look like, not the modern day. So they're not
the 6-wing type?
Yes. They terrify me.
Yeah, I always kind of wish they did Castiel on Supernatural, like with the 6 wings.
Exactly. So
I always kind of wish that.
Mm-hmm. But there are some tarot decks out there if anybody's into learning more about demons. And the King of Solomon, or the Keys of Solomon, is another good one. And then this is what we do. We go beyond the basics of witchcraft, and we look at other occult, esoteric type of systems that are not really well known. Keys of Solomon are interesting. I use that a lot when I do spell work for money and for business and clients. And so I forget his name, but he has a couple of tarot decks on occultism and demons. So very interesting. Even if you don't work with them, if you're in the spiritual world, if you are a witch or a pagan or whatever, you have to know some of the stuff that we're talking about. It doesn't mean you have to work with them.
See, you kind of almost freaking me out right now because there's something in my house. No. It's not you. Because there's something in my house. I originally thought it was the spirit of the man who lived here previously, who passed away. But as soon as you started talking about this stuff, it got cold as hell around me.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I gotta get Sunshine a Star, my a previous guest on this podcast who lives close to me. I gotta get her to come to my house and get rid of whatever's in my house because it's just cleanse it. Like,
where are you at, if you don't mind?
Massachusetts.
Oh God, you got so much. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Sunshine is from Salem, and she was born in a call. She's a witch. She's a terror. She's everything. Like, there's literally nothing she can't claim some kind of knowledge in. Like, it's just kind of like you. She's a master of a lot of different areas, and she offered to come to my house and clean it. And I finally got enough money to do it. So
yeah,
because I mean it's a drive for her, so I understand her charging.
Well, yeah, and people don't understand this also. When we do exorcism or cleansing or clearing, we are putting our energy and ourself out there, right, to do all the heavy lifting and to be in a situation that may not spiritually be the best situation. Sometimes we come home with stuff, attachments that we got to work on for months to try to get rid of. And so you're really just paying for us to work energetically between this world and the spiritual world or the underworld, right? I love the underworld. We can always talk about underworld goddesses too.
Wild Bill, I like where your head's at.
Oh, Jens.
Because Wild Bill said, for those who are listening to the podcast form,
yeah.
When speaking of Solomon, you must also speak of jinns. And jinns are, I mean, I don't think we could deal with them in America, often at least. I mean, they're more a Middle Eastern terror, but it's just, they exist. I have no doubt they exist. I've heard enough stories from the Middle East to know that they exist and that they are a real threat almost because they are powerful. Like, they are powerful beings, and he, according to Wild Bill, in his journeys, he also studied the writings of Aleister Crowley.
I love Aleister Crowley. It's a horrible person he is.
Oh, he's a horrible person, but I mean, the stuff he did and the stuff he unlocked is just incredible. It is. I mean, it's hard to think of Aleister Crowley without thinking of American Horror Story. But I mean, still. But
that's when you have to separate the art from the artist or the magic from the magician, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we still have to give him credit for bringing some of that stuff to the forefront, even though he was a horrible person.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, the way he did it was not good at all. Like,
and the way he treated women, and because who was that lady? I forget who did his tarot deck, and they never really gave her credit. Same thing with Pixie.
And Wild Bill says he has all three of his grimoires.
Wow.
Or three of his grimoires, not all three. But there probably is more than that, I'm sure. But
I would love to get into more occult book collections.
My wife claims to have originally have a the Devil's Bible, the original version that felt like human flesh on the cover rather than like the not the Church Satan Bible like I had when I was a teenager because I was trying to be Marilyn Manson badass, but like the actual like she claimed to have the real thing. So I mean, I wish she kept it, but
correct.
And while Bill says he knows of Christians that treat women worse, yeah, I do too. But that's
completely.
That's that. You don't have to be a Satanist to treat women badly. No. And yeah, can you say Salem Trials? I agree, Wild Bill. Salem Trials were horrible. If you want to know more about those people, I recommend Unobscured by Aaron Mahnke, season 1. He does a deep dive into the Salem Witch Trials, and it's freaking. Oof, the stuff he brings out is just brutal to hear. But all right, well, Madame Zee, unfortunately, we are at end for this episode.
We can talk for forever, man.
I might have to have you back on, and we'll get more into the occult on a sequel episode, maybe. But because the occult does fascinate me, and it's hard to find people willing to talk about it. That's the problem. But
It's not scary. Knowledge is power. Everybody.
exactly. But where can people find you? Where can they find everything you offer? Just promote yourself to the fullest.
I'm at madamezee.com, and if you go to the website, it has links to probably everything: my school, my courses, tarot readings if you need one. If you're a spiritual business person, I do spiritual business mentoring also. I do witch mentoring. I am on YouTube also, and Instagram, Facebook page, and I have a Facebook group also. So I'm all over the place, just like parsley, or should we say salt?
And like Wild Bill will conclude us off by saying, it's how you use the power, and knowledge is the key. So,
Yeah.
but I want to thank all my watchers for watching. I want to thank all my listeners that will listen to this for listening. And you, of course, know where you can find me. Listen to the outro if you need to hear it again for some reason, or if you're new. And if you're starting on this episode, go back. There's a good 150 episodes by this point for you to listen to. So I have a lot of episodes to edit. Yeah, I know. But until next time, listeners, I thank you all for being here. And Madame Zee, I thank you. It's been a truly fascinating hour. And I will get you back on some point because I have to. There's so much more we could talk about. And maybe next episode we'll get into Dogmen a little bit too. But let's save that for next episode because I want to have content. So thank you all for watching and listening. And I'll be back, I think, Monday with the next paranormal interview. Actually, no. I will be back Saturday with Stop Thinking With Your Butt podcast to talk paranormal. And they are huge into the paranormal. So we're going to have fun with that one. But see you all next time. You can find me on Facebook as Jeremy Bryant, or you can find me as Uncensored, Unapologetic, and Untamed UQ Podcast Collective Facebook group. You can find me on Twitter and the Instagram as @JugglerBastard, or should I say X now. And you can find me on TikTok as @JugglerBastard Podcast. You can also find me on YouTube as Paranormal The New Normal. And you can also find me streaming on YouTube as Blind Knowledge Network, because all knowledge is blind until they admit Bigfoot exists.